Good evening and welcome to the October 13th, 2020 Prior Lake Spring Lake Watershed District Board of Managers meeting. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Steve, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. So our next item on the agenda is the public comment period. I don't see anybody here from public necessarily, but I'm going to confirm that there's nobody here in the chambers that wanted to speak at our public comment period. Seeing none, then just for the public, you're always invited to come down, say hi, say hello to your colleagues in the watershed, your employees in the watershed, and the managers. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And I'm going to look to my colleagues. Are there any items, deletions, changes to the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
No, hang on. I'm going to make sure there's nothing from Diane, but seeing none here. Diane, nothing. So yeah, now Kurt, go ahead, please.
Motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So the first thing, we're up to our other old new business. We have our programs and projects update. Diane.
Okay, we have the Prior Lake level below the weir for the whole last month, and the level is down to 901.7 feet. We do have some preliminary water quality results from the lake sampling that Three Rivers Park District does. Just to let maybe the new board members that don't know, we do have two different programs for lake water quality monitoring. One is that we hire Three Rivers Park District and they do surface, middle, and bottom sampling on the lakes. And then we also have a program through Met Council called CAMP. It's citizen-assisted monitoring. So the results that I'm showing you right here are just from the Three Rivers Park District monitoring. So these do not represent all the lakes that we sampled this year. The Met Council is much later in getting the results back, often not until January or February. But we do have the lakes of interest, I guess, for you tonight, which would be the two lakes that we had alum treatments on, Spring Lake and Upper Prior Lake. So that's what I wanted to point out tonight. Again, these are preliminary. They haven't been quality checked. What you're looking at here is the total phosphorus for 2020, and how you take these results are the average of June through September, which is how we analyze the state standards for lakes. So we want to be below those green lines in order to be meeting the total phosphorus standards. So there's the difference in the two different lines is based on whether it's a deep lake or a shallow lake. So shallow lakes aren't expected to be quite as clean as deep lakes. So does that make sense? Okay, Bruce?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, quick question. I didn't know we had a Pike Lake. Is it Pike West Lake? Pike East Lake? I didn't know we had that.
Yes, Pike Lake is along the outlet channel.
Yeah.
And we monitor on both bays, so the west and the east indicates which bay it is.
Okay.
So it's kind of got two different lobes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so the east lobe is along Pike Lake Road, and then the west lobe is what the outlet channel actually flows through. So the outlet channel doesn't go through the east side, which is probably why it's so much cleaner. It's got the dilution from the outlet channel coming through. So yeah, looking at this, we have really excellent water quality results to show that east lobe of Pike Lake is above the water quality standards for phosphorus. So that's fantastic.
Jamie, before you move away from this slide, I know you have more, but when was the last time we've seen a chart like this? with
A
those
chart like
bars.
this?
Yeah, with the bars below the green line. How long has it been? Even I know we're not done yet, but how
I'll
long
show
has it
you in
been?
the next slide.
Oh, okay, you're there. I'm playing straight man then.
Any questions about this graph before I move on? Otherwise, Manager Pani? Miser, Mike?
Steve, go ahead.
I have a question with the low rainfall recently. Would that be a contributing factor to better readings?
As compared to other years or this fall? Yeah, you definitely, with more rain, you have more sediment and nutrients flowing into the lakes, so that can a lot of times lead to worse water quality results. But it can also potentially improve if the water that's flowing into the lake is coming from a really clean watershed, then it's the whole solution to pollution is dilution thing. So it does depend on the lake and the watershed that the water is flowing in from. Sometimes also with lower rainfalls, you might have shallower water, and then the sun and the heat, like if it's really warm, there's less volume of water, so then that could actually lead to more algae blooms due to the higher water temperatures. Here's a really messy graph, but it tells you everything you want to know about Spring Lake since 2004. As I mentioned, we have water quality standards, and these are the three main parameters that we look at when we're determining if a lake is impaired for nutrients. We have the Secchi depth is coming from the top, that blue bar, so that if you can imagine dropping a disc down in from the bottom of the lake, that's how deep the clarity is in the lakes. So for Secchi, if you are below that blue line, that means that you're meeting the water quality standard. The orange line is the total phosphorus, and so if you are exceeding, if you're going above that orange or the red dotted line, you are not meeting the water quality standard, so you want to stay below that red line. And then chlorophyll, the same, you want to stay below that green dashed line. Those are the standards for Spring Lake. So this is, if you look all the way to the right, 2020 is the first time in recorded history of us monitoring the lake that we have met and exceeded all water quality standards, all parameters. So that's really exciting. You can see we've never been below the chlorophyll A standard.
Jamie?
Go ahead, Jamie.
Jamie, just a quick question. I mean, I've only been on the board maybe a year and a half, but I've always heard that chloroform A standard was probably never can be met. Now we met it. Do you attribute that to our alum treatment and everything else that's going on, or?
I would attribute it mostly to the alum treatment,
Okay.
yes, yep.
So it can be met, that standard can be met.
Apparently, yeah.
Another point that Manager Hennis said, he started in 2013. You see what the trend has been, at least on the phosphorus since he joined, is that, clearly there's a lot more work. But sorry, Jamie, you were going to answer him and I interrupted, so go ahead.
He quit doing his laundry in the lake.
What was
Did you have anything further, Jamie?
I don't think so.
No. Kurt, you're,
I started in 2013 and got on the board. It was just pitiful. That spring, I walked down on my dock and the water was chocolate brown. It was chocolate brown. I couldn't believe it. My thanks for the great job in the alum treatment in conjunction with HAB. The only question I have, if you two can answer this, I don't know, but why was the second alum treatment on Spring so poor and only lasted 2 years? Was it because of poor information or poor engineering by Barr? What do you see there? Because by the second year, we were already above the standards again.
Well, so that second treatment was done in the spring of 2018, and if you look at the phosphorus standard results, we did not actually exceed the phosphorus standards after that treatment, so I wouldn't say that it was poor results.
Well, what's that for 2017? Isn't that that bar 71? Isn't that the phosphorus?
Yes, but that was after the first treatment, so we treated again in
Wasn't this was the second treatment in 17 or 18?
2018.
Was it 18? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well,
So yeah, it was fall of 2013, so you wouldn't see the results until 2014, and then spring of
Just-
2018.
just out of curiosity, why did we do a treatment in 18 if it was still under the, why couldn't we extend the 18 one out if it was still good in 19?
So there's three different parameters that we're looking at here. So the phosphorus after the 2018 treatment was meeting the water quality standards, but you can see that it wasn't meeting the standards for the Secchi depth or the chlorophyll A. So you need to be meeting two of the three parameters in order to be meeting the standard. So it would still be considered impaired if two of the three standards
So
are
how
met.
long do we have to maintain this in order to get Spring Lake off of the MPCA's impaired list? Is it 3 years? It's 5 years. We got to maintain this for 5 years.
And it's not exactly black and white either. There is a best professional judgment panel that will look at the water quality results and determine if what we've done is going to keep it that way. So we have to, there's a lot of discussion. It's not just 5 years and you're off the list. They have to meet and discuss because we are using, this alum to keep it under the standards. So if it starts creeping up, it naturally will start creeping up again unless
In
we
other
do
words,
another alum treatment.
it's a minimum of 5 years. It could be more if it starts creeping up. Wow.
It can
Boy,
be,
those are
yeah.
tough
I think it's
standards.
I just want to say that it's not completely black and white like that. Yeah,
All right, thank you.
they will discuss it.
One other quick question. The test that you're showing here for 2020, is that the results of how many tests or how many?
There's 9 samples. This was the results of the average of 9 samples taken from June through September.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, any other questions about Spring Lake? So then the other lake that we had the alum treatment on was Upper Prior Lake. And we have very, very similar results. I can almost say ditto to Spring Lake, except there was one other year where the Secchi depth was better in Upper Prior Lake. That was in 2014. But otherwise, it is... Yeah, that was a flood. That might be the solution to pollution is dilution thing. So, yeah, so there was only one other year when it was more clear, and again, the Secchi, or the total phosphorus and chlorophyll are better than they had ever been, and again, the first time ever that all 3 parameters are meeting the standards. Yeah, that's pretty exciting. We don't always have that good of news. So, any other questions on?
These both these last 2 alum treatments, the one on Spring and the one on Prior, that was EOR who did the engineering this time, right? Or no? Was it Barr again?
Well, EOR was in charge of pretty much everything for Upper Prior Lake, and then
Barr still at Spring?
we did have Barr for Spring Lake again because they had done it.
Yeah, before they had done it before, right? Thank you.
Yeah.
Our favorite subject in 2020.
All right, so just a little update on the CARP management program. From the IPM plan that just got approved at the last meeting, we kind of categorize everything into 3 categories. We're either tracking, blocking, or reducing. And go to the next one. So with tracking, we've been looking at all the connected water bodies to Spring and Upper Pryor to try to figure out if there's any other nurseries that we need to block off. So everything that you see a star on is ones that we surveyed with fike nets and trap nets in these. And so we're still waiting to get the initial results back from WSB, but one of the interesting things that they noted that we kind of talked about at the tour last night was that they had set some traps in the 1217 wetland. We know that there has been like a couple adults in there that survived. We didn't know if they were reproducing, but they found 4 young of the year in there, and they only found 2 in the Geist wetland. So that kind of shows you how well those bluegills are doing in that Geist wetland. Because that's a much bigger area. We had more traps. We had 3 different traps set in that one, and only 2 set in the 1217. So it's definitely doing its job. But we're going to analyze this data now that we kind of have like a little bit of a lull in activities, and come back with a plan on where we need to put a potential barrier for next season, where we might need to want to stock some bluegill, and just get a better plan for next year. And then we've also been working on the reduced category. So we were still finishing up those baited box traps since the last board meeting. So we did a couple of removals on Spring Lake, and we got 785 pounds out. One of the things to note is that like all staff are getting involved in this. we had Jamie come out on the boat with us for one of the removals. We even had Amy, our office manager, out on the boat at 3 a.m. So we have had everybody get involved in this. Our next step is to get Diane out on the boat. Maybe next year. We also have been doing these micro hauls. If you recall, we did one last spring. This is taking one of those block nets that we have and trying to do like a little mini seine in an area. So we baited an area last month, and we had enough action out there that we decided to try for the micro haul. That was when Amy helped us out. And we're still learning on this. The net that we're using is 30 feet deep, so it's much deeper than we needed it to be. We had problems with the fish getting underneath the lead line. We definitely had some in that haul, but they escaped. So we're still learning as we go. If we can get this to work, the beauty about it is that staff can do it. We don't have to hire WSB. And I should note too that the photo on the top with Jeff, Jamie, and Shauna in it, that was our first baited box trap remover with only staff. So the idea is that, WSB is setting us up with these traps. We're learning as we go, but this is going to be something that staff can employ at a very reduced cost. So we're trying to make this program something that can last long term and something that we can be successful at. So we just keep learning as we go. But the next steps that we're doing is we're going to assess that fishery survey data. We're going to continue to do these micro hauls and figure out how to make that work. We are on track to set surgically implant 5 more radio tags into Upper Pryor and then another 5 into Spring. We want to make sure that we have active tags at all times. We're going to try to do another Geist wetland removal if we can fit it in this fall. The water levels are pretty shallow, so we're going to need a good rain in order to get in there, but we're going to try for it. This Thursday, we're going to go into 1217 wetland and get those big carp out. We kind of toyed with doing a rotenone treatment, but we just are a little bit leery on that, and we just want to go in and see if we can net them first. So we're going to try that on Thursday. And then we're going to clear those same areas of obstruction. So right now, Tony's talking to Jeff Friedemann, getting them lined up to do clearings both on Spring Lake on that west side and the kind of the northwest corner, and then over on Upper Pryor Lake, over in Mud Bay, and as well as like the west side of there near Mike's house. And then we're also pursuing the DNR permit to drop those water levels in the Northwood Pond. So that's one of the areas that we kept on finding adults in. We saw them spawning in the spring. We're going to drop those water levels to freeze them out and hopefully kill them. In case they make it, we're probably going to throw some bluegills in there next spring. We're just making sure that that's not a nursery site, because if they do reproduce in there, those the carp barrier prevents adult carp from getting up, but there's still an opportunity for those smaller carp that can fit in those 2-inch areas to go downstream back into Upper Pryor. So you want to make sure we knock out that nursery. And that's what we've been up to.
And I just wanted to add that we do have to get a permit from the DNR to drop the water level, which of course, is something we ran into with Sutton Lake. So hopefully it'll be easier with Northwoods.
Maggie, I have two questions, and then I'm going to let Steve go. So the first thing I noticed in the update that you have the Metro CARP Management Group. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Mr. Chair, managers. Yeah, so Jeff Anderson and I always talked a lot about how the different CARP groups don't talk to each other. There's a small, like, Southwest Metro group that talks, but we started this group last March. It was at their first meeting. We had a big response when we sent out emails to people just saying, hey, are you guys interested in getting together and learning from each other? And we had over 20 people attend that one. And then we had, this is our first online one since then. I asked folks to host the event, so Drew Dickhart from Carver County hosted, but I helped coordinate. And we still had, I can't remember, it was pretty close to 20 people show up to that too, even though it was online. We're just trying to learn from each other, coordinate, like removals. We always talk about where to take the CARP. So we're sharing information on where we're taking them. We're sharing information on success stories, you know, how we can work with commercial fishermen better, how we can access grant funding better, if it's better to go as a group or individually. We're just learning a lot from each other and still kind of coordinating this group. So yeah, we're gonna try to meet 4 times a year.
Great, thanks. Steve was next.
Thanks, Maggie. 1217 wetland carp removal. How did carp get in the 1217 wetland? Are they hatching in there?
Mr. Chair, managers, so when they did that U of M study in the 1217 wetland, they were gonna stock some spawning carp, but what they found was that there was already a couple carp in there. So there was carp in there before that study started, and then afterwards they did a sweep to take out the adult carp, but they didn't get them all because there's still some in there. We've seen them splashing around, and we've kind of been monitoring it. It freezes every winter. We think they're dying, but then we did the fishery survey this fall just to see if truly things are surviving, and they are, and so we don't know exactly how they got in. They might have gotten in before we put those carp barriers up and those agri-drain structures, but somehow they got in, and now we're just gonna make a big effort to take them out. And we're also gonna drop the water levels and try to freeze that out too.
Kurt?
The 12 and 17 wetland restoration project. Now, we started this, I believe, back in 2015, and it was estimated that it would only be the watershed's responsibility for 3 to 5 years. Now, it doesn't look like the city's ready to take it over.
Mr. Chair, managers, so the watershed district's responsibility was for that vegetation maintenance. We were supposed to be done last year, but we had that Sunset Avenue reseed. The county seeded it in the wrong mix. We were fixing that. And Pete and I are gonna meet later this fall to talk about handing it over. So restoration is looking really good. That is not gonna be our responsibility anymore, but as far as the CARP and the 1217 wetland, that affects, so that's kind of still on us.
Troubleshoot other outlet structure issues. Are there still outlet structure issues from the wetland?
Mr. Chair, Manager Hennis, so that's an even separate issue. The permit's still not closed for that. Every single year I meet out there with the county and the city, and it's the county's responsibility to make sure it's functioning. Every time they fix it, we wait 6 months to see what happens, and every single time there's additional piping and other things going on. I'm sure Carl can speak to it, but I think it's the soil type, I think it's the way it was designed, I think it's using these cheap agri-drain structures. There's a whole bunch of issues, but we keep meeting with them to resolve it, and we're not done. I'm not gonna close out that permit till it's done, but it's still left unresolved at this point.
All right, it's been a long time.
Bruce?
Yeah, just one quick question. I know previously in the workshop, we talked a lot about stocking of fish, and I don't see it listed here as a project, and I know we started with stocking to control carp, so I was just wondering, should that be in the carp management project list or a separate project, because we're doing it separately? I know, Maggie, you've been involved in that, that's why I'm asking you.
Mr. Chair, Manager Loney, so you're saying put it in the projects and programs update? Yeah.
It seems like it's going to be going on for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll add that as a separate line item. We decided to put it in the rough fish management category, but it's kind of grouped together in CARP management. But I can separate that out just to make it clear moving forward.
Thank you.
Anyone else? More questions for Maggie? Seeing none. Thanks, Maggie. Next, Diane. Moving on to the MnDOT permit, then that's it for our updates. Is that correct? Sorry, I gotta get by the speaker.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Next item then.
That will, yes. Item number 4.2 will be Maggie.
Mr. Chair, managers, so MnDOT came to us with this permit request. If you recall at the April board meeting, they had come to request that this project specifically be reviewed underneath the rules that were proposed in the Water Resources Management Plan at the time in that draft. So those were the 2019 proposed rules. So Carl did his review on this with that in mind. And so when the MnDOT made that request at the April meeting, it was approved by the board. So this is not being reviewed underneath the old rules, it's the rules that are yet to be approved. The second thing that MnDOT requested was that we waive the permit security. So they asked us to do this on the Highway 13 project, and Charlie was on the board at the time, and he specifically requested for Dwayne Stedlin to be on there to do the erosion and sediment control. He's kind of the leader in the state for that, and he has just been fantastic troubleshooting that project. So they made the same request on this project, that permit security be waived. And just for frame of reference, that security is used only to enforce the erosion and sediment control on the project or any water quality features. This project is only being enforced for erosion and sediment control, so that would be only permit security for that. But since they requested that we waive that, you'll note that in the conditions on the permit, I did mention that we could request Dwayne Stedlin to be on this one as well, because it puts a less risk on us that something is going to go wrong, knowing that he's going to be overlooking this project, and he'll already be in the area for the Highway 13 anyway. But the erosion and sediment control is pretty good at this point. Carl had a few comments on it. I will probably have like a few comments on it as well, but for the most part, it's pretty good. And then because we're not reviewing this for stormwater or anything else, it's a pretty cut and dry project. I don't know if, Carl, you have anything to elaborate on, but at this time, we're just recommending that this be approved with the following conditions up on the screen.
Questions, anybody? Frank, you're up. Oh, no. Bruce?
Got to move it.
Oh, okay, just one quick question. I know Dwayne Stedlin, he's pretty much my age. If he retires over the winter, you got this in the provision, I mean, that's kind of unusual to put a name in the condition. Just, or something happens to him. So that's an unusual condition, to put a name, a specific name in there, but anyway, just I want to make that comment. Thank you.
But clarifying, they complied with that in exchange for not having a security deposit. Is that correct then, Maggie?
Mr. Chair, yeah, so I did word it that we would request that Dwayne Stedlin is going to be on it, but it doesn't require that he be on it. Okay. So,
Anybody else questions?
I got one.
Kurt?
Just so everyone knows, this is a complete tear down, a complete rebuild of 282 about 7 or 8 years ago, because I drive that route to Jordan a lot. They just did a milling and replaced about an inch of asphalt on there, and it's just, that road just gets pounded, especially by truck semi-traffic a lot, because it's used as a shortcut to get away from all the heavy traffic on 169. And this thing is going to happen next year, and I think they're going to close down 282 for a while, and maybe even 13 too, somewhat. I know 282 for sure. I mean, this is a big deal. So we'll see what happens starting in the spring. Thank you.
Mine are probably only comments. I was reading this again, and I kind of remember having these thoughts the first time the state came to us asking us to go under draft rules, not current rules. And I remember exploring with you, Carl, what are the implications of that? And I don't know that I'm going to ask it again, but just sort of for the record, I'm uncomfortable permitting anybody, I don't care that it's the state, under draft rules. They're not done yet, and I'm uncomfortable with that. I think you got me comfortable that this wasn't as big deal, if I recall. Carl, I will ask the question. Carl, can you clarify what the issue is again, why doing this under the draft rules, even though they're draft, isn't such a big deal for us?
Mr. Chair, managers, in this case, dissimilar to what, for instance, the Highway 13 project was doing, where it was a full reconstruction, correcting all the subgrade, really tearing things up, changing in some cases the elevation and the profile of the road, and doing full infrastructure with culverts and everything. What they're really doing here, while it's not a mill and overlay, they're just taking the pavement away all the way down to the gravel base, and they're building right back up in the same footprint and profile with no drainage alterations except for one culvert lining within the district. And so it's not, it's an order of scale, I guess, on where you are on the spectrum of a road reconstruction project. And this one is closer to a mill and overlay. There's not going to be any increased negative effects. They're not going to exasperate any issues. It's kind of a stay as it is. And the drainage that occurs along this segment of the road right now, it doesn't directly discharge to any wetlands, and there's fairly large rural roadside ditches, or the water just flows to cornfields. So when that question was put before the board, my opinion was this seems fairly reasonable. At the time, we maybe thought we were going to be, a month out before the approval or consideration of approval of the draft rules as written. And I had one last point, but I think I forgot it.
So the same thing, maybe even on the security deposit. We do permits for other public partners in and around the county. I mean, are we setting a precedent by being able to waive the security deposits for one and then not for others by doing so? Any thoughts?
Mr. Chair, managers, I would have to say, with the MnDOT project with Dwayne Studlin there, I feel like things are taken care of. But even with the permit security, sometimes it's hard to enforce erosion and sediment control and what they're doing on site. It is an incentive to get things finished up, though. Usually after major construction is done, everybody kind of leaves. You just don't see anybody. And the vegetation establishment will sit. But then when they come back to me and ask me for their $20,000 or whatever it is, I say, well, you got to finish this first. And it's just an incentive for that, and it's helpful. It's just a tool in the toolbox to use for enforcement, which is always challenging.
Well, so if it's a tool and it's a necessary tool, because I get for just the reasons you stated is the perfect, probably the most common example, it's the reason we have that, to ensure that it gets done. Why should the state be waived and not any of the other folks that come to us for a permit? Is that what Dwayne is going to do for us to ensure that doesn't happen?
Mr. Chair, managers, I think he'll kind of make sure that it's better. I think for the Highway 13 project, because there's so much disturbed area, it was going to be, gosh, it must have been close to like $60,000 or $80,000, and they thought it would be a burden on the contractor, because it's not the MnDOT that pays for the permit security, it's their contractor. And so the city hasn't requested a waive of that, like in the pickleball court. They still pay that, or they have their contractor pay that, because it helps them, it helps us, because we know that it's going to get done. I'm not sure why MnDOT is requesting it for this one, probably just because it's been done in the past.
Yeah, exactly. Well, as soon as you do it once, then you can get them waived for the future. So just then suggest, as we're doing the draft rules, that we ought to reconsider the policy stick of a security deposit. Are there better ways to do this then? If a security deposit can cause problems for getting the work done or getting contractors, And again, it's only being raised tonight, so I'm not going to push it for this evening to approve this permit, or for the application, but is this suggesting that maybe we ought to be looking at that in our draft rules? So that's a hypothetical. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, well, when I worked for City Shakopee, we routinely waived our permit fees for Scott County working on a right-of-way or vice versa. We had that agreement. It's like a public entity. You're charging each public taxpayer some money, which, didn't seem to make sense. But they were smaller permits. The other thing I would say is too, and maybe someday, we talked last night about maybe running a pipe underneath Highway 13, and would MnDOT extend the same courtesy to us?
Yeah.
I mean,
What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know if if we had to get a permit, I'm sure they would ask. I mean, that's just something, is it a common courtesy? If we waive our permit fee, would they waive it in the future for us?
Nice
Just
thought,
kinda-
wouldn't that be,
well,
maybe we'd
just
note
something-
that.
something
in
to
the,
ask.
Recommendation. Go ahead, Carl, you've got something, then Kurt, you had a question or thought?
Just one quick clarification. MnDOT's probably not going to waive any permit fees that you have for them, but they're also not going to require a surety of a district's contractor for the district's project that they've permitted. So there's the difference between the permit application fee and the security for compliance. Yep.
Okay, thanks. Kurt? Okay. All right. Anybody else? Seeing none?
I moved it a long time ago, but no one wanted to second.
Frank? Go, man. I know. I didn't know if there are any questions. Otherwise, then Frank, you have the floor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further conversation? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for putting up with me, too. All right, next item on the agenda is the boat inspection report.
So the company Water Guards is who we hired this year to do the watercraft inspections, but the lady that's in charge of it, she wasn't able to be here. She's on vacation for October through December, I believe. So she actually created a video for us that we can watch. And then if we do happen to have questions that we can't answer, we'll just have to get back to you at a later date. So hopefully this works. I didn't test the volume.
Thank you for the opportunity to present our 2020 Aquatic Invasive Species Watercraft Inspection Services Year-End Report. I'm Stephanie Johnson, President of Water Guards. We employed 5 inspectors and were blessed to have excellent inspectors this year. We worked from fishing opener through September. We worked at 3 boat landings. We worked at Spring Lake for about 500 hours, Upper Pryor for about 200, and Lower Pryor also for about 200. Our total was near 900 hours of inspections this summer. We completed about 3,500 entering inspections, 1,400 exiting inspections, and 3 courtesy inspections. Courtesy inspections occur when a boater wants to make sure his watercraft is in compliance with AIS laws, but doesn't actually intend to launch that same day. So our total for the year was around 5,000 inspections for an average of about 5.6 inspections per hour. We inspected lots of different types of watercraft. We inspected canoes, fishing boats, john boats, personal watercraft, pontoons, runabouts or ski boats with no ballast, sailboats, wakeboard boats, and boat lifts, docks, or other apparatus. As you can see from these numbers, fishing boats and runabouts are the majority types on your lakes. What did we find? We found aquatic plants, 54 times on entering boats, 228 times on exiting boats, mud 7 times entering and 14 times exiting, and zebra mussels 0 times entering and 2 times exiting. We also found 82 drain plugs in upon arrival at the landing. This is a pretty significantly high number. What were our challenges? Garbage. Garbage was a significant and consistent problem at all the landings. All lakes in Minnesota experienced a significant upswing in number of new and occasional boaters. These boaters need much more information on invasive species and education on proper procedures to keep their boats and trailers clean. Inspections take longer with these boaters. And then, as you can see from these two photos, boaters experienced long lines, especially at Lower Pryor. It was difficult for one inspector to inspect both entering and exiting boats during these times. Not only was it physically difficult to go back and forth between entering and exiting boats, it was mentally difficult to handle frustrated boaters. I'll have to note that inspections didn't hold up the lines. It was just the sheer number of boaters trying to launch that were the cause of these long lines. For suggestions for next season, number 1, we'd like to be able to utilize a few hours for on-the-job training mentorship for new inspectors. It's one thing to learn how to do a proper inspection from a DNR video, but it's altogether different to do a proper inspection in person, and it would be really nice for our new inspectors to learn from someone that has some experience. And the second item is we also suggest that inspections start at 7 a.m. or later in September due to darkness. Thank you for the opportunity to serve your lakes and your community this season. I hope we can work together again.
Thank you. I know we aren't going to really be able to ask any questions of them, but anybody have any thoughts or comments? Mike, Bruce, Steve, Kurt? Because I did have.
I have a couple questions. The garbage thing, do they pick the garbage up? Well, Frank, you might have an answer for this. And do they pick the garbage up every day on Lower Pryor? Do you get Buckingham?
I don't know what the schedule is, but I know they do it frequently. They do work on weekends.
Okay,
But it's
they do.
amazing the amount of trash that finds its
Oh,
way out
yeah.
there
Well,
from houses as well.
People don't want to take their garbage home.
Well,
When they
yeah.
can drop it there.
Jamie can respond to this because she checked this out. Go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the main issues is that we used to have garbages at the Prior Lake landings, both the upper and lower, and the city did used to have garbage cans there, and they frankly stopped doing it because people were abusing it. There was people from the neighborhoods that were dumping their garbage in there, and it just got abused so much. And then the other problem that they had on top of that is when there's a garbage can there, people think if it's full, like, that they just put the garbage next to the garbage can. So then what they've found over time is that it's more garbage lines up there if the garbage cans get full than if there's no garbage can there at all, because if they see the can, they think it's your responsibility. So that was what we found out during the many complaints about the garbage. Now, the Spring Lake Association does pay for and manage the garbages at the Spring Lake boat launch. They do have issues, but I think, overall, they think that the issues are worth it for the boaters on Spring Lake. So the association members do all the work with that.
Was this, I see the sentence, we encountered many angry boaters at this landing. You know anything about that? Was there any incidents?
There were some incidences. I don't know if I can recall any in particular, but it was more just the frustration with the length of time, not so much about the AIS inspections, but they just got the anger taken out on the inspectors.
This might be something the city has to address, because I've heard from a number of people about the heavy traffic on Lower Pryor. I mean, really heavy, and it isn't going to get any lighter. You know, someone's got to do something. You know, put up another landing.
Well, it might get lighter after COVID. I think COVID was the main
Well,
reason for
yeah,
it
that could
being-
be too. That could be some of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But
And then one more question. It would be nice to have more of a police presence at the landings. Well, that's what we were talking about with eyelids too. You know, the police issue, claiming that they're spread so thin. You know. All right. Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, if I could comment, Lower Pryor Lake had a high volume of boats this year, and there are no garbage cans at the boat landing. So if one person leaves some garbage next to the porta potty, then other people start doing it. There's a couple of signs there now, no garbage dumping. So I don't think the city should put garbage cans there, or the DNR people should learn to take their stuff home.
So my thoughts, and I know we don't have Stephanie here, but I read this, and I gotta tell you that my impression of this, while there was some good information, and again, seems like the effort is valuable for us to do, I was struck at, to me, this was not very detailed, not very rigorous in the write-up. We didn't have very much information compared to what we got last year. And I can cite some examples. I wasn't sure about where any of the data on where they were finding issues. It didn't talk to us where those were happening. Was it on spring or upper or lower? I was pretty surprised that they're even talking about garbage. We're talking about, we hire somebody to do inspections for us, and while sure it might be noteworthy, but they're talking more about stuff that really wasn't about the inspections. There was a couple of good points, but I saw those. And I thought, okay, it's difficult to get information on when and where the fishing tournament, so why does it matter? I mean, can you tell me more about why that matters, maybe to the work or to the effort? So I found this stuff not very helpful to me as a report. I was, the fact it was too difficult to inspect both entering and exiting boats. Okay, well, so what did you inspect then? I mean, did you do one or the other, or did you do some? Did you miss some? Can you give me some quantities? The fact that inspectors were shoveling weeds and picking up trash, and I thought, well, that's not what we hired them to do. And I thought, well, I think that's nice if they did that in their free time, but we're paying them to protect our lakes from invasive, both coming and leaving, to make comments about what improvements, the training stuff, while that might be a nice idea, that should be on them. That's their company. It's what they do. They should be able to prepare and train their employees to do a good job for us. That's why we hire them. And I'm thinking, what's the point of bringing that in here? So I don't know. I was disappointed compared to what I sort of recall from the other folks, and they also made the time. I get vacations can occur. It still looks like our effort is valuable, even though, again, the quantities aren't high, and it sounds like we have generally good compliance. And this was probably a very tough year with the quantity of boats. I get it, but I expected more and more detail and more focus on what we hire them for. So it was just some overall feelings on where I landed on this. I wasn't impressed with the report.
I will, in her defense, actually, so this is a different company, and it was $8,000 cheaper, and we didn't necessarily catch it that a report wasn't actually included in the cost. So they don't do reports on a regular basis. This was something that she went above and beyond to do for
Gotcha.
us, because we kind of caught it last minute. We were asking her when she could come and do her presentation, and she was kind of caught off
What
guard.
presentation? Gotcha. So this
so-
is, again, maybe a miscommunication. I get it. So here's why I think it's valuable. It's just like, I guess, when we talked about the eyelids, as we're trying these new things, and this is our second year, we're trying to make improvements on what we do or how we do things. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to just, because we want to do a better job, so it's like getting a post-mortem or something on something, what's working, what's not with respect to inspections. So maybe that's on us because it wasn't in the request, but then I'd like to request or confirm with my colleagues. To me, that's a absolute requirement, especially because we're embarking on this new adventure, and we've adjusted dates and times and coverage this year based on what we learned last year. And I think we're still early in that process, trying to figure out the right path forward. So, Frank?
That might be an argument for continuity.
Yeah,
Whereas
true.
We're doing a multi-year.
Good point.
Mr. Chair and members, just to inform you, if you are a new manager, and to remind people, we actually didn't hire Waterfront Restorations to do the first year. They were hired by Scott County.
Yep.
And, but they came and did a report for us anyways. It was one that they did for Scott County, but then they added in our boat launches. So, yeah, they're definitely much more professional than what we had this time around. We also were a bit concerned about the fact that Stephanie was scrambling to get people to be inspectors. Now, that wasn't necessarily her fault. It was COVID. And the DNR, you know, took months to get out there and start doing inspections.
Yeah.
And also, they have to do an online training. They have to get approved. There are steps that have to be made. But, you know, there are more than 2 companies out there that, you know, next year, since the managers are supporting this in the budget, that we'll just, we'll do another round. We have enough, as Manager Loney pointed out, we have $38,000 in the budget. If eyelids is 10, we still have, or 28, you know, which was what we had for Waterfront Restorations for their estimate. We still have enough to do it with a higher cost if necessary. Now, we are the, just FYI, we're the ones that are actually responsible to do the reporting to the DNR. So we needed information from her to fill out their report.
Gotcha.
So, so there is there is some incumbency on her to give us the information we need.
Okay, thanks. Bruce?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. See, I've been the liaison for the Scott County WMO, and they do hire a company, and they're very interested in, you know, combining, again, I think, at least it's worthwhile, the volume pricing, we might be able to get, you know, a good deal, but, and then look at the companies that are out there that maybe that would work again. We went on our own this year, correct? And Scott County has another company?
Mr. Chair, Manager Loney, what happened is that this year, because we had some requirements about what we wanted to see with the first year, Scott County said, well, we've got the money from the state, we'll pay for the inspections. But because we were real specific about what we wanted, this year they said, why don't you guys do it yourself, be the responsible party with the DNR, and if there was some coverage that we couldn't afford, they would have chipped in. But basically, it was a separate contract. So that's why we actually did interview Waterfront Restorations. As Jamie said, they were $28,000, $7,000 more than what we got from Water Guards. And we had EOR staff who helped us put together the proposal review the proposals as well. And it sounded like they were pretty much the same, and one was quite a bit less expensive. So that's why we went for them. But absolutely, Manager Meiser knows that Waterfront Restoration was really bummed that they didn't get our business, and has already been coming to me to say that they're interested for next year. So,
Well, if we can just get our notes for what we'd like to improve on so we can continue to do better. Anybody else? Then we're moving on to the next item, and that is the consent agenda. So this is typically reserved for the non-controversial items that we support and vote on en masse, as I'm already gathering. So my friend, is there an item you'd like removed, Bruce, from the consent agenda?
I would like to remove the minutes, 5-1.
5-1.
A couple of errors there. And the claims list, I do have a question, 5-3.
And 5-3, okay. So anybody else? Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve the amended consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have motion and second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you. Bruce? Meeting minutes?
Yeah, on the budget workshop minutes, it says Monday, September 9th. Actually, it's Wednesday, September 9th, and Charlie Howie was not present, I do believe. But I think Steve Pani was.
I thought the ghost of Charlie.
And the same thing for Charlie, we tried to get rid of, no, just kidding.
Charlie's everywhere.
Charlie's here.
Everywhere. He's everywhere.
He's here. And then the same thing with September 10th, that was a Thursday, and Charlie Howie was not there, Steve Pani was. So make those corrections, I guess. Has anybody else got anything?
Good catches, Bruce.
I looked at that, I go, man, that looks funny.
Nice job, sir.
It just
All
shows
right.
you I do read the minutes.
Claims list? Yeah, exactly.
The claims list, I just had one question on your boat club. Is
There we
this,
go. Okay.
There you go.
what is your boat club? Is that Mike Miser's club?
Yeah, no.
No, I think.
What is that?
I think the main question is, why is it on there? Remember when we bought the John boat, managers were told that we wouldn't have to have the your boat club membership. Why is it on the claims list?
No, we didn't say that.
Oh, yes, you did.
So let's.
Because I asked about it before I voted for it.
Yeah, the boat was purchased mostly for the CARP program, but knowing that we can use it for other programs as well. But we kept your boat club because of our biobase program, which is the vegetation mapping program, and just to have access to another boat. We've used them for tours and other things, but we did say last year that we were going to use your boat club for at least one more year. And it does come in handy because we've multiple times had to use both boats on the same day. And it's a very small expense for being able to just walk out and grab a boat at any time for, I think they charge us half of what a subscription is that they would charge to other private people. And in the past, they didn't charge us anything except for gas. So now they just started charging us half of a subscription, which has been very nice of them.
So is your boat club, is this the marina? Or where?
Kind of.
Sorry. Yeah, so
Where is it?
I didn't answer the question. It's, yes, it's,
42? Right there? Okay. I didn't know.
right. So yeah, people can, they pay a subscription to have use of these boats, and there's different tiers, but it's located right on Lower Prior Lake. Yeah, I don't know what else to say, but it's a boat rental place.
Jamie, can you give us a sense, how many times might we use one of their boats in a year? Say this last year, once we had the fishing boat, or the carp boat, John boat.
I'll say 20,
Okay,
25. Because I don't know how much other people use it. I probably used it close to 15 times myself. I don't know how often you used it.
I mean, the interns and us probably use it another, like, at least 10 times. Because sometimes we'd be going out on spring and upper prior to track carp.
okay, thanks. Okay, anybody else, anything further? Diane, you had a,
Mr. Chair, no, I just wanted to mention that Kim Silvernagel from the CAC is the liaison today on behalf of the CAC. So that's why you have her in the audience. Wanted to introduce her.
She does a wonderful job. She's a terrific secretary.
Most of
Thank you
us
for all
knew-
your hard work.
most of us knew Kim and why she was here, but yes, for our colleagues, great, good to see you again, Kim. Any more questions on this? Seeing none, then I would entertain
Yeah, I'll make a motion to, can I do both items?
yes,
Make a motion to approve the minutes on item,
the amended minutes.
the amended minutes for September 9th budget workshop and September 10th workshop and board meeting, and also approve the claims list as submitted.
Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Frank, are you an aye on that one? Awesome. Thank you. Unanimous, 5-0. Yeah, I'm watching. Or I try anyway. All right, we're on to the treasurer's report. Bruce, you have the floor, sir.
Okay, I think you'll have the treasurer's report. It was put on the desk here. And essentially, we're doing pretty good. We got that $177,000 from FEMA in here, which didn't show up on my report yet because it came in on October 9th or something like that. But it's in the bank right now. So if you look at everything, we're still looking at a second half levy payment of $672,000, and the remaining FEMA, well, it's in the cash flow that Chris Shadow provided. It's 400 and some thousand that is remaining. Everything seems to be on track. I need to contact Cindy Geis of Scott County. She said wait until November to contact her to see if she can give me a more updated number. So hopefully, I think everything is looking good that way. So if you look at my report, the projected end of the year reserves about 788,000. One thing here in Chris Shadow's cash flow analysis, he's showing 100,000 being cashed in from investments. If things go the way we think they're going, we may not have to pull that down until I think the retirement or the end date for that fund. One is in January and another one's in later on. So it's looking good as far as right now. Any questions?
Thank you, Bruce. I did have a couple of questions before I see if my colleagues will. So, you know, I was reading, again, I love the fact that we're doing these cash flows, especially because of this year. You know, it was a little hard when I was looking at this, maybe it's been a month. Could we put the assumptions down on underneath that so that we know what's making up the difference between the best case and the worst case?
Yeah, actually, I could summarize that too.
I believe there's only one difference, and it's the FEMA. Is that the FEMA payment?
It's the FEMA payment.
That's it.
Yeah.
So it's still, but even with the assumptions, it's based on a 70% collection on the levy is our current estimate.
Right. And the difference really in if you look at the best case scenario, showing a cash flow of 1,013,000, he's basically, I'm showing, I think the difference.
I was going to ask that. That was my second question.
The
Yeah,
difference-
you've got it. You've got a 1.3 almost at end of year.
Right.
Versus our,
We have two securities that total 375,000. He's showing taking 100,000 off of those securities. I'm leaving them all in our cash flow. He's not putting it in there. So if you would add 275,000 into that 1,013,000, that would come close to my end of the year cash flow, 1,292,000.
and so if I just do a clarification on that. So for the number, November. that
Yeah,
was-
he's saying we might need to take 100, he's always showing take 100,000 out of the securities, which we're showing 375,000, so 100,000.
So that would bump that up to 1.1. Sorry, where's the other 175 coming from?
We have a total of 375 in there right now, and he's saying take 100,000 out. Well, that leaves us 275,000. He's not accounting for that.
Oh, I see. You're
I
reducing
am.
it. Oh, now I get you.
So-
I get it. Yep. You're subtracting it.
And then he's not,
Okay.
cash flow really talks about later on the restricted funds, so
Okay.
real funds at the end of the year, that's what we're looking at.
Yep, I get it. Well, it was nice, actually, a few of these numbers tied out, too, so nicely
I had
done.
to-
I know you've been working
I had
hard
to
to
check
get
that
this,
myself,
so.
yeah.
And I think it's important this year with the big assumptions that I think we have one, so, and of